baby. Welcome to another episode of the Bald Avenger Show. I am Jason Sisneros, also known as the Bald Avenger, the tattooed guru, the purveyor of all things common sense, the king of the Misfit Nation, and a legend, Nina, in my own mind.
And mine.
It's the greatest place. I think everybody should be a legend in their own mind. You guys are in for a treat tonight. We have somebody that's a real life superhero, somebody that I admire, somebody that I look up to, somebody that I can't wait for you to get to know. One of the most powerful female badasses that I've ever met, and takes away anybody's excuses for pretty much everything as you hear it. But we'll touch on a few things, and then I'll let Nina sort of introduce herself a little bit. But she was a nominee for England's Woman of the Year for the entire country. Spent some time not as a personal bodyguard, but as a guard of Margaret Thatcher, a hero of mine, and a lot of other people, and lots of other things, including a mafia hit that we're going to get that was put on her life. She worked in the police in England. She worked on the unit that busted pedophiles and that type of stuff. Her and I's path crossed through CERT Ministries and doing some undercover work for the rescue of little girls and little boys. Those of you that are from Misfit Nation, you know that that's the work that I am passionate about and that I do. And Nina and I spent many, many hours in vehicles. And I think we sleep when we're on a mission. We sleep maybe out of 6 or 7 days. We sleep, 9 hours, maybe the entire time. They like to drive us hard over there. Pastor Rudy and everybody with the team. It's an amazing group of people. But we're going to have a great conversation tonight. Very, very interesting subjects, all the way through to painting rhino horns. And I'm going to leave it there because there's a great story behind it. What you can see the rhino behind her. She's a huge advocate and fights against poachers in the darkest, deepest parts of the world. So welcome, Nina, to the show. What did I leave out?
That's it, really. I can go now.
That's it? We're done?
Yep.
The end of the show? So tell us a little bit. Let's just get started, I guess, at the start. When you were working at a police department. Oh, you did an undercover sting as well on police corruption. So let's just start from the beginning. In England, you're part of the police force. Start there.
Okay, so I joined the police because I watched Cagney and Lacey and decided that I wanted to be in the police force, much to my parents' total dismay. Wanted to be a dog handler. And at the time, because we're talking 89, so it's a very long time ago, I was 18. And I wanted to be a dog handler, but at the time there were very few females, and there were certainly no female dog handlers. But they didn't tell me I couldn't be a dog handler, so I went every day off and I ran with Alsatian dog hanging off my arm with the hope that that's what I would eventually do. But when it came to the interviews, I was told, you know, there's no way, there's no female toilets. And that was kind of, at that time in the police, that was kind of the thread, you know, as a woman, you looked after children and rape victims. That was kind of your role. And at 18, 19, I really did not like children. And I kind of like my own now, but that's about it. But that was my role. And even though there were guys who had kids and things, and then one day I was looking after a rape victim, and she was so incredible and had been through hell. And I wanted to be a detective, and that was the turning point in my career and made me a detective. And I worked on covert jobs. I worked on, as you said, the paedophile unit for a long time. I worked in murder squad, special branch. So I was really, really fortunate that I got to do everything that was cool and fun. I never got promoted. I made a decision very early on, and that I didn't want to get promoted because I wanted to do the fun stuff and go from division to division.
The fun stuff, like putting yourself around murderers and pedophiles and working on the day-to-day, the fun stuff, right? Which is your personality. As people get to know you, they're going to understand why that was the fun stuff for you. So go ahead, keep going.
So that was what I did. And when I joined the police, I really worked hard. It took me, you know, a year to get my fitness level to the standard that was. And they were in the UK back then, there were really high standards, educationally, height-wise, you know, everything. Over my period within the police, those standards were removed. You know, equal opportunities became crazy and standards were removed, which allowed different people to get into the police. And it wasn't necessarily, certainly in my eyes, it wasn't necessarily the right people. And I saw corruption sweeping into the British police, the government, the politics of it all. You know, back in my day when I joined, if we had discretion, we could take a kid home and you know that their dad would give them a clip around the ear and that would be enough. But as time went on, everybody had to be arrested. Every ticket had to be filled out because it was a numbers game. And that wasn't why I joined the police. So I tried to leave and they wouldn't let me because obviously I'd cost them quite a lot of money by this point. So they told me to take up to 5 years out so I didn't burn out. And during that time, the thing that was always in my mind was the standards, the corruption, and what was really going on. Because, and I will advocate for this till my dying day, being a cop is a really tough job, and majority of police are good cops. We only ever hear about bad cops because it's great news. We don't hear about the ones who are, you know, putting their life on the line day in, day out. So I wanted to make a difference and I wanted to get rid of the bad and make the good cops shine. So I went back into the police and I carried covert cameras, which were in my body armor. And I carried those for 10 months and I recorded the corruption that was going on within the police. But I told the only people who knew in the whole world was a lawyer who said, do not do this under any circumstances. And the head of ITV TV, because I went to him and said, if I did this, would you make it a documentary? Because it's the only way I'm going to have a voice. And they obviously said, of course we will, but this will never happen. You can't go and expose your own. That's just crazy. But that's exactly what I did.
So, you know, again, we've had this conversation a few times, but what's your mindset? Because I mean, when you think about the thin blue line is how we refer to it. I'm not sure if it's referred to as the same thing in England, but that thin blue line is so tight, right? And then you come in and then you're exposing some of these bad cops. What was your mindset? I mean, when people found out you did it, what was your situation within the department?
Well, I knew that I'd had to resign before they knew. I was fortunate that they didn't find out while I was doing it, because I think then I would have probably been in prison for a long time. So I had the privilege of being able to resign before they were able to know what had happened. And then it was like, it was in the hands of the gods. I had no idea what was going to happen to me personally. I didn't really know the response. I knew why I was doing it. I was doing it, what I believe, for all the right reasons. but I didn't know whether that would transfer to the actual force or whether they would all close on me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the hardest thing while I was in there was I had this moral dilemma because I'd been a police officer for a long time. And suddenly I had gone in with cameras with a purpose of exposing corruption. And there were people I had been friends with and known for a long time who were being corrupt. And that was really hard because I was like, well, these are my friends, but I had to stick to my own moral standards, where this is about corruption. It's not about exposing people you don't know. It's about exposing corruption. And that was tough. And some people in the documentary were actually people who've been crewmates of mine. But so when I came out, it was a case of, well, let's see what happens. And fortunately for me, majority, again, I think because majority of good cops were very supportive. And I received a lot of letters from people all around England saying, you know, you've been the voice we can't be, and hopefully you've made a difference.
I think that, you know, the phrase, you know, when evil can only thrive when good people do nothing. And, you know, and I admire that. Most people sit back and they just let it happen, even if they're not participating. The natural human reaction is just say, not my problem, right? And so that's a part of your personality. So you leave, and then what's your next gig? What happens next?
So when I leave, a lot of things changed in the British police, and I then was nominated for UK Woman of the Year, which was, you know, even today I'm like, that's just ridiculous, because people have done real stuff. I was just doing my job. And so that was a real honor. And after I didn't win that, I was down to the last 5 as a finalist. And the lady who won it that year was incredible. You know, she'd been about taking sanitary ware into Africa, and as a result, she'd been raped and held at gunpoint. Like, she was a real hero. And then after that, I made a TV show, because suddenly everyone realized that I could actually be undercover and film it. And so I made a show called Undercover Mum, and I went and lived with people who were hurting kids, or not necessarily hurting, but there was some connection to children. So one of the stories was with a drug dealer. The other story was actually a fake, and this is probably the one that hit home the most, was a fake doctor. And he was prescribing drugs to children who didn't need drugs, and he owned the pharmaceutical company. So, and I very blazing, terrible parenting, used my daughter for that particular episode. And it was so powerful that when we came out from seeing him, and she knew that she was making a TV show with Mom, she actually burst into tears and was like, "Are you going to tell school that I'm really ill?" It's like, you're not ill, like, you're not ill. This is what he does. So it was a kind of that show where anything that connected to children, and so there was drug dealers and pedophiles and things involved, criminal side. And then after that, as a family, we moved to Australia. A decision.
So before we go to Australia, though, what was the outcome of that show? What were the improvements that were made? I mean, it's interesting. You and I have had this conversation before about our kids and the work that we do, and we get some pushback. And I have had the question multiple times, like, why are you doing that work and then also going public about it? And it took some real deep thought processes on it didn't occur to me until somebody that was really close to me said something. You know, Jason, why are you doing this? You don't need to do it. You've got this great career, and you've got this, and you've got that, and plus you have kids. Why would you do that? And it took me a couple of days of hard thinking to go through that process and to say, am I putting my own family at risk? Am I doing those things? But what I landed on, and I want to know what you landed on, was I landed on the fact that God put me in this place with a unique set of skills and a platform to be able to expose what's going on in the world of child trafficking and domestic violence and starvation. And if I didn't use it, then I was just as bad as the people that were doing the harm, because now I know about it and I can do something about it. And then I decide not to do anything, right? And it's caused, multiple things. We'll get into your mafia hit, the interactions with the bad guys that I've had, and the backlash and the security that I have to have around my kids now. So what when did it dawn on you, or what was your decision making to continue to do the work that you're doing, even with the family?
I think you hit on it. You know, it was about being able to do something or not do something. And I'm fortunate, crazy, I'm not sure, but I'm prepared to do something. You know, there are people, and we'll use the police. You know, there were people in the police who wanted to do what I did, but they, for whatever their reasons were, whether it was they were just too scared, or they needed their career, or whatever it was, they weren't able to. It didn't mean that they didn't want to. Whereas for me, I just feel that I'm somebody who can do something, and therefore I personally internally feel I have to do something. Now obviously my kids are my whole world, and they're the most important things to me, but they've also learned so much from me by what I do, you know, and the way they are now as adults, young adults, I think is because of what their mom has done throughout their life. And it's not that you're blasé, because obviously there's protection around the kids, and you know that there's certain things that you wouldn't take the kids to or on. And you know, it took me a while to take Harrison to Africa because it wasn't safe for me to do so. But I think generally the bigger picture is that they have come out as better adults and an understanding of life, and it's not all rainbows and unicorns, you know, that there is a
and it translates into what's happening today, right? When you it's just this like little piece of, I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to do anything. It's okay that I'm losing a little bit of privacy. It's okay that I'm losing a little bit of my voice. It's okay that, you know, that people are turning on each other. It's okay. It hasn't entered my bubble yet, right? And I think it's a great message for people to say, it doesn't matter where you are, you can always do something for somebody that needs it, right? And whatever your level is, I mean, you don't have to be a cop, you don't have to do the undercover stuff, you don't have to do that, but you can do something along the lines of holding to principles that our forefathers and foremothers and, you know, that have died before us, to maintain this thing that we enjoy called freedom and sovereignty, really, as an individual.
Yeah, and I think when we were working, and you touched briefly of the operation we were working, what a huge operation. You know, we were out on the front line, but that operation only happened because so many people were prepared to give their own time, give what skill set they had.
$10 from Misfit Nation. You know, I mean, the massive amount of work that it takes to go in and do a successful extraction of a child that's being trafficked is unbelievable. And we have, you know, with Maddie and with Pastor Rudy, we have two of the greatest leaders to follow to make that happen. And then the interaction with the local police and all of the stuff that has to happen. It's a coordinated effort, which I love. Misfit Nation, big shout out to you, because, you know, a lot of these missions are funded by Misfit Nation. We put out a call, and, you know, there's a vehicle that's been funded that Misfit Nation was able to participate in making sure that it got purchased for the team. Though that's saving lives, right? That's changing lives. That's creating freedom for other people. And you know, and making sure that the team is big enough, and as you know, you're hearing here, she's one of the most qualified humans on the face of the planet to be on the team, and she's running out there with us unpaid and of her own volition. And that's all due to the fact that we come together around this idea of easing suffering. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, that's how I view things with my kids. And you know, they've grown up with this, that it's not something that just happened one day. Mom went, oh, you know, I'm going to be crazy today and I'm going to go out and I might not come back. They've grown up with it, and they're not blasé about it, but they understand and they realize that mom's making a difference. And for me, for them as human beings, that's so important that they understand that it's not, you know. And I like you, Jason, I've had people say, this is terrible. What you do is terrible. You're a mom, and yet you risk your life and you risk that of the children. And yes, I do, but it's for a bigger picture. And you know, my kids are way better for it.
Yeah. Well, in my answer, the specific question was, what if you die on one of these things, and, you know, and your kids have to be raised without you? And at the end of the day, I would much rather have them live with the memory of me standing for something than to have me physically being a coward. And that was ultimately it, you know, the decision. So, all right. So you make it through this situation, and then you and your family take off to Australia. What happens then? You
So
become
we
a police officer again, or?
no, we go no, they won't. So we go to Australia because I want some sunshine. That's basically the top and bottom of it. And I wanted a life for the kids that, you know, different to England. And then I decided I'd better get a proper job and forget the TV kind of world. And so I set up a private investigations company. Was happy just me, and set it up, and then it just naturally, organically grew, turned into a bigger company, joined another company, and then suddenly we had a private investigations company globally. One of the things that I was doing at the time in Australia, there's a huge mining community. And so I had a lot of investigations on mine sites, and there was a lot of organized crime around mine sites. And one of the things that was happening was they were losing millions and millions of dollars of property. And so I was like, well, how do I solve this? Because it's okay me doing an investigation, but I'm not necessarily solving the problem. And so over a number of years, I think it was three or 4 years, I worked with a scientist and we invented an invisible paint, which sounds really easy, right? It wasn't easy.
It doesn't sound easy to me at all. An invisible paint. Go ahead.
Invisible paint that dried, once you painted it onto an object, it dried invisible, and it contained your chemical DNA, and it could never be removed. So that's why it took a while. And there was a small article in the paper about local businesswoman makes this paint, no big deal. I was just painting things. And
what was the original purpose of it?
To mark property so that we could always recover it back to the original owner. So if
something got stolen from one of the mining companies, and you traced it back, you could look at the paint with some sort of method, and it would have the original owner's DNA embedded.
Yeah,
got it.
Okay. That was the process. And then I was contacted by the head vet in Africa to say, could I paint rhino horns with this paint? And I was like, I assume so. Like, it wasn't my mindset when I made it, but yeah, why not? Because it was safe. And he said, can you make some paint kind of by tomorrow? Because I think it was Tuesday, we're going to Africa on Thursday. Now, I've always had a thing for Africa because my parents lived in Africa. My brother and sister were both born in Africa. And so I was like, yeah, let's go paint the rhinos. And they honored me and said, come with us and you can paint your paint on the rhino's horn. Now, that's just, I mean, even now I pinch myself. So off I go to Africa literally the next day or 2 days later, and I'm involved in this huge operation. And it's a big operation to dart a rhino so that you can tag him, and now you've got to paint him as well. And so we start out with a plane, he spots them, then the helicopter comes in with the vet darts him, the helicopter lands, we do our thing, and they can only be asleep for 20 minutes, and we're covering them with water, and it's a big operation. And then you dart them to wake them up, and that's the really worrying bit, because you don't know how they're going to behave. And I remember the ranger said to me, hide behind the tree, Nina, hide behind the tree. There was a tree this big, like it was a sapling.
How do you, what size of a tree do you have to be able to hide from a rhino that's pissed off?
Right, and they are pissed off. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So I got involved in that way, and it was incredible. And then as a result of me being around that environment, they understood what I actually did for a real job, and that I was a security expert. And I was noticing that their knowledge of how we would run an operation in England was lacking. Of course it was. You know, nobody had ever taught the guys how to do it. And our rangers are incredible. The head rangers are amazing.
What part of Africa?
So this is in Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe, okay.
And so I kind of stepped in and helped them understand what an informant does, because informants can be very, very dangerous in whatever use that you have of them. And you can have an informant who runs you. And that's what was basically happening. So I stepped into that role, and then we ran covert operations to actually go capture the poachers.
Well, and these poachers, because they're putting down rhinos and literally they're just sawing off the horn.
Yeah, kind of, but it's more brutal than that. They'll throw an axe at a rhino, and the axe will go in the back, so it disables the rhino, so they don't actually kill it, and then they hack the horn out while the rhino's alive, and it's horrific.
And so your paint is on these, and so now if it gets shipped around the world, wherever it is, I know there's a huge market in China at the moment for these rhino horns, and the officials track it down, it has the coding of where it came from, and there was a protected area, and now they have all the more tool for prosecution, right?
And also for us, from the protection side, it would also tell us, okay, so we thought that there was, that protection part was okay, but clearly it's not, because you don't always know a rhino's gone the next day or the next week or the next month. It can take time before you realize that a rhino's been killed. Because it's so obviously scarce now, and it's such a massive area. So for us, we were able to very much quicker say, well, there's an issue here, we need to look at the protection and what's going on there. But eventually what we were hoping, and again, legislation is, because you can actually find the paint even when the rhino horn is ground down, which is what happens. So if they ever changed it that some rhino horns were legal, others weren't, we would be able to say which ones they were and which ones they weren't. So it was pretty cool to say that that was never the intention, or even had that ever been a thought. But then it also opened up, the opportunity to use the paint for a lot of other things.
So I'm just tracking along. You go from pedophiles and murderers to really kind and loving and understanding people called poachers.
Yeah, same
same type of thing, in the line of duty, in the line of danger.
Yeah.
All right. So what's next after that? Where do you go from there?
So I'm in Australia, I'm in Africa, I'm in Dubai, I'm working around the world. And then, my daughter at 18 has a scholarship to New York. Probably the hardest thing ever, because it was like, yay, so proud, but was like, no, that's the other side of the world. And she and I are very close, she and my son. So she moves over to America, and then my son moves over to America too in 2018, and it was a case of, okay, well, I want to be where my kids are. And so I then set up things so that I can move to America. So you've got me now, because the kids are going nowhere.
Perfect.
Sorry, America.
Welcome to Mary Poppins. We call it her nickname when we're doing undercover stuff is Poppins, not her call name, but her nickname in the car when we're there for hours at a time doing the work we do.
I wonder why.
Yeah, just the accent.
So we moved here, and same line of business. Obviously COVID stopped me being international, but still same line of business. Also a few TV things in the pipeline, and got involved in the AntiTrafficking Humans, with obviously where I met you with Pastor Rudy, and so privileged. They are an amazing organization. And I remember when I first met Pastor Rudy, and I said, have you got any female operatives? And he was like, nope. I'm like, can I be your operative? Clearly he's got Maddie and Cece, who are just out of this world. But
I always tell people that if I go to war, I want Cece on one side and Maddie on the other.
Yeah.
Pastor Rudy can be behind us somewhere.
Yeah. So I was really privileged to meet them, and then obviously I met you guys, and we had. It sounds weird saying we had the time of our lives when we were on the last operation, but you have to be in that environment, and it's like, that the humor, the dark humor, is what gets us through. And
and we have a saying, you know, and I told you this when we had you in Clubhouse, but you know, in Misfit Nation, we talk about being happy warriors, because everybody that watches the show or follows me, what's, you know, at all, is somebody who's gone through some trying things in their life, right? They've gone through some stuff and now they've switched over, and instead of becoming bitter about it, they've decided to become better, and they use that pain and the knowledge and the wisdom to be able to ease suffering for other people, right? And in doing that, you've committed your life, just as you have, to being in the darkest places and seeing the worst in humanity. And if you let that inside of your spirit, if you let that inside of your soul, it can act like a cancer. I've seen it, right, with other people. And so the way that when you say, you know, we had the time of our life on an undercover mission, it's because that's how we deal with it. It's happy warriors. I'm going to be happy. And then when I got to get laser focused, we got to kick a door. We got to, you know, be out there for 7 hours, just watching the place, or whatever, or 10 hours, or whatever it is that we need to. There's time in there that we have to keep our spirits up, because somebody needs us to show up at our A game. And you can't show up at your A game if you are miserable on the inside, or if you're selfishly thinking about yourself. You have to build that happy warrior outer, you know, it's not even a shell. It's kind of who we are, right? In your DNA.
yeah, and I think, you know, even if inside, like if you're going through some personal stuff, to be able to do that, it takes away all of that personal stuff. Because, you know, if we save one person and we've sat there for 4 days, it really doesn't matter. Yeah, we moan about it. But and I actually am going to share a story now of how scarred I am, because you will know that I hadn't tried many American foods. So I'm going to tell the peanut butter and jelly, PBJ.
PB&J, right? Peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
So let me just tell you that Jason's lovely until you mess with his PBJ sandwich.
Especially on an operation.
On an operation. When we talk about, you know, everyone was there for us and there were so many people. So for the audience out there, every morning we are given sandwiches for the day, because we don't know when we're coming back. And everyone was ticking this peanut butter and jelly except for me. And so one day Jason and there was our crewmate Brett were like, have you not had one? So the ladies made me a sandwich. And we needed information, right, Jason? So who gave up their peanut butter sandwich? It was not you.
It wasn't. It was you. Yeah. Yeah. So it literally bought information that we needed on a case. So you're welcome. You're welcome for that tip for you know, dealing with our informants.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what all it took. And then you guys were like, Nina, you need to have a bite of this. So I took a bite and then went, this is fabulous. And you guys took it off me and were like, no, you're only having one bite. That was it. At the time. So I think you recorded it.
Yeah, I did. I have it on video. Your first bite of a PB&J sandwich in America.
My only bite. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're the kind of things we do.
That's the kind of thing. And we have a great time. And there's such a bond between all of us that are on the team. And, you know, and so we can joke with each other and that kind of stuff. But everybody that's there, like when Pastor Rudy, it's very rare that we add somebody new to the group, you know, and then, you know, obviously somebody new, they're going to throw you with somebody like me, because I'm going to test you, you know, every way I possibly can. And you fit like a glove, and, you know, just like with the rest of the team, because your heart is not centered around you. It's centered around the work that you do. And you were, you know, to use your language, lovely. You were lovely. So let's talk about the mafia putting a hit on you.
Oh yeah, that was a really interesting time. You know, you just get it out there.
Really. Well, you know, we've gone, like I said, pedophiles, murderers, poachers, human traffickers, and now you pissed off the mafia.
Yeah, by accident. I mean, it wasn't a planned thing either,
I'm
but
not sure anybody probably goes, hey, you know what I'm going to do today?
I don't know. I think Jason,
Don't tell my secrets. Don't tell my secrets.
so I was involved in a really big investigation. It was money laundering around the world. And I had two clients, two separate clients, but ended up joining each other purely by chance, I think. And long story short, along the way, I recovered some information that really I shouldn't have got. And so I had an informant working with the bad guys. And he rang me. Now, at the time, my daughter's living in America. My son is about to go to America, but he's still living at home. And the informant rang me and said, hey, they've just taken a hit out on your life. And I was like, oh, okay, I need some help with this. Like, I'll normally deal with everything. And so I rang the police. Now, the police actually don't really like me very much now because I make them accountable.
Right.
That's fine. So I didn't know what their reaction was going to be, because here was this PI who goes and does murder investigations when they haven't been able to find a murderer. And I rang them, and actually the detective was amazing. And so everyone in the world arrived at my house, and they said, you know, you need to go into protection. And I said, I can't. When do you ever come out of protection? When's it ever going to be safe?
Yeah.
And so they put measures in at my house. I had police outside my house, and my third floor in my house was screens of cameras that they put around my house. We had panic buttons everywhere. H and I had panic buttons on our phones. And that was, I remember the first night was the worst night, because we didn't sleep, because every noise was like, what's happening? Luckily, Harrison was moving over to America, so he went over to America, and that took a little bit of pressure off me. But it was a very lonely time, because I didn't want people at my house. I didn't want to involve other people or even let them know, because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was actually talking to a guy last week who had been in a similar situation, and he said his safe time was when he was in the car, because he felt that, you know, he didn't know where he was driving, so how was anyone else going to know where he was driving? My worst time was in my car. I think I've kind of felt at home in my home, which was probably ridiculous, because, you know, you're in an enclosed space. But my worst thing was that when I stopped at traffic lights, I was fearful that somebody was going to pull up on a bike and just put a bullet in me. So I lived that life from the April till the November. And the laws are really different in Australia about, you know, arresting people and the evidence side of things. And in the November, there was a knock. So my bedroom was on the top floor, and I had my own personal camera that overlooked the door. And there was a knock at the door, and I looked at my camera, and it was early. I think I said the other day it was 7:45, but I think it was 6:45 or 5:45. You think I'd remember, but it was early. And so I looked at the cameras, nobody there. Now, the way the door was situated, you would not have rung my doorbell without there being a reason. And so I went down to the next floor, and all of the cameras were off, like everything was, and I was like, okay, something's really wrong here. But I actually didn't ring the police or press my panic button. I actually rang a friend and said, I think that there might be somebody at my house, because all the cameras have gone off. And they said, well, press your panic button. And I was like, well, I don't want to trouble anyone. Like, what if it's not the... Anyway, I did press the panic button, and uniformed police arrived, who had no idea why I'd got anything in my house. And they looked around and was like, oh yeah, there's nobody here. And then the detectives arrived later that day, and they initially said to me, it's all fine. It was just a mistaken identity of a door. I'm like, okay. There's a hit out on me, and somebody's mistakenly gone to my door. That didn't...
Your cameras are off. Yeah.
My cameras are off. So eventually the following day, I was actually in a meeting, and I should have had my phone off, and I hadn't, you know, thank the Lord. And they rang me and said, can you get home now? And I was like, no, I'm in a meeting, and I'm already now in trouble because my phone just rang and we were supposed to have it off. And anyway, I got home. They said, no, come home. And they said, we've looked at the footage, and it was, because we knew the name of the guy, and they said it was him. And he jammed all the cameras. So he jammed the cameras, all the CCTV on the street. Now, had I opened that door, that would have, certainly wouldn't be sat here now. But then it was a case of go into protection, and I was still of the same mindset, you know, and he came, and my gut stopped me opening that door for whatever reason. And then we go back to what we spoke about right at the beginning, you know, I had children, and suddenly I'm like, you know, my fear was for my kids and my friends rather than for myself, because I've chosen to be in this industry. I've chosen to do the things I do. I didn't choose to upset anyone that they wanted to kill me badly enough. So that was really, really tough. And then I made a decision that I couldn't live this life where I was looking over my shoulder. Yeah, my kids were away in America. That means nothing. You know, there's planes, there's communication, there's people all around the world. So I actually made a decision to go and see the bad guy myself, the head of the gang that were in Australia, who is straight out of Central Casting, by the way. If you look at, he should be the head of the mafia.
Yeah, that's who I'd pick for my bad guy in my movie. Yeah, got it.
And so I rang him, and I was like, and I'd researched him, and I knew he was a dad, and I knew he didn't like the police, and actually his daughter, his girlfriend who had the child was actually the daughter of the commissioner of police. Now, if that wasn't, I don't know what was. Right. So I went to see him, and he said, don't bring anyone with you, and don't bring your team, don't bring the police. And that was, I flip-flop between, do I take a surveillance team with me, because we're really good, and he'll never know.
Right.
But I made a decision that I was going to go alone, and we went and we met in a public place. We met in an English kind of pub, although we're in Australia, and we sat and we had a cup of tea. And I don't like tea at all, but everyone assumes because of my accent I love tea, and he clearly assumed the same. And it's the one time I drank my tea without moaning, because I was not going to tell him I didn't like tea. And he was a fascinating guy, and he had a little bag of baby wipes, which everything he touched, he wiped. Obviously, he was getting rid of his DNA. He had a couple of heavies behind him who I know were bagmen, so he would never carry a firearm. Somebody else would carry his firearm for him. And we had a conversation, and he basically liked me for having balls and going and seeing him, and that was the end of it. And I was told that I would never have any issues again from them, and if I ever needed them, never, I could give them a call. Right. Been tempted, let me tell you. Various things that we work on. But yeah, it was a really tough time for me. I mean, my kids were aware, and people close to me were aware, but having that constant, and I'm very aware of my surroundings, clearly, but having that constant fear of, you know, is it today? Is it that person? Is it the person in the grocery? Is it somebody who, I mean, we knew who he was, so that was useful, but have they paid somebody else to do it? You know, it was just a really bizarre kind of April to November. It was a really tough time, but something again that I'm proud of the way I handled it, and the police were, credit to the police, they were really good, really good.
I love that. Well, let's talk about, because we're coming up on the hour, but let's talk a little bit about what kind of advice you would give to people with all of your experience in private investigations, and what do you think people should pay more attention to, should know that they really don't? Like, what's some tips for them for their own lives?
I think with social media, I think the young generation, we do have an issue. I mean, I now have a company in America called Saber 22, and then Owl PI out of Australia. And we now get asked to check people's history of social media. And I've had a couple of jobs where kids who have made stupid mistakes back in the time when they're kids, it's affected their whole life. You know, I've had kids who had scholarships who've had them removed because they went in a chat room at 14 and said something that wasn't appropriate. So for me, social media is a real big thing for the young generation, because they think nothing can be traced, and they think that it's only them, and that's a real worry for me. And social media is great in the right hands. It's fantastic. It makes my life more difficult when I go undercover, because it's easier to find someone, but it's also really hard to cover your tracks more and be a fake person. But I think just having an awareness of your surroundings is so important, because we're in a country where, people will fall out with you for nothing. And it's not just America, but it's, I'm very conscious. I'm not going to say the same thing in America that I probably would have done in England or Australia. And it's just being mindful. I mean, one of the things that I used to do in Australia and England was, I hate people who litter. So if somebody throws litter in front of me and they're in their car, I'd go pick it up, chuck it through their window, and then run away. I wouldn't do that, because there's the firearms thing. But I think it's being aware of your surroundings. I'm a nightmare to go out for dinner with, because I have to sit in a certain place, and if I'm in the middle of the room, it's
just ask Emily when we go to anywhere. She already knows where we're going to sit. She knows where I'm going to sit. She knows with it, for the whole thing. That's funny to hear, because Emily and I go through that every time we go out to dinner.
Yeah, so we can't go for dinner because we want the same seat. So we'll have this.
Exactly. And I'm not fighting you, actually, because you might whip my ass, and I don't want to be the guy that got his ass whipped by Mary Poppins. That takes all my street cred completely away.
Because you and I are very conscious of entry and exit points. In case something does go wrong, we need to be able to get away and be safe. But they're just really little things, and scamming is such a massive thing now. And that please check. And even businesses, I do investigations for businesses who have lost millions. I have one that's 20 million at the moment that they've lost. What due diligence do you really do? And, if anyone needs anything doing, please get a hold of me through Jason, because, it's simple, and it might be $10,000-$20,000, but it might save you millions. And the amount of businesses that don't do due diligence, they get a letter. Well, the letters are 9 times out of 10 fake, and it's not that hard to prove.
Well, it just happened with our gas lines, right? The hacking that just literally just happened that put everybody into a panic about not being able to get gas. And that was some hackers that wanted to get paid off. I think they paid him $5 million to let them get back online again or whatever. Right.
I have somebody else who has been on a dating app and lost millions. And I've been on a dating app and been asked for money, and I'm like, oh, let's play this game.
Wrong person.
Did you not get the 25 million I put in your bank accounts? Oh, it went out of mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just being aware and asking questions, because people are too frightened to ask questions because they don't want to look dumb. And it's not about looking dumb. It's about asking a question. It doesn't matter what the question is, or if you go with your gut. Like, yes, you and I have really good gut instincts because of our life and our experiences, but most people have a gut instinct. So go with it, and go and ask for help if you have.
And this is not a sexist statement. It's more against men than it is. It's pro woman, which is especially if you're a woman. Trust your gut. Like, I'm surrounded by, Nina's just one example of powerhouse women that I'm around, and Emily, and you all can sense stuff that we can't. And being able to inform the male in your life, or paying more attention and trusting that, right? As Pastor Rudy says, know your worth. Like, your worth is that feeling, you're having it for a reason. And you need to be aware of it. It's a red, if you feel like it's a red flag, then it's a damn red flag. And the worst thing that you can do is be embarrassed because you were wrong, rather than, be harmed because you weren't.
Right. Exactly. And there's always somebody that you can turn to, where it may not be your immediate family. It may just be somebody, whether it's someone is watching this and, Jason, you have a massive following, and they reach out to you because they don't want to talk. And I've been in a circumstance myself. I've made mistakes. We're all human, but it's about, just being self-aware and you're right, what you're worth is really important.
Really important. All right. Well, great show. I'm super happy to have you. I'm honored to have you in my life and to be, for you to be part of our team and all of the work that you do. We're going to be doing stuff together for the rest of our lives because that's what happened. We became family, and I respect you so much, and the work that you do, and the attitude that you have, and your willingness to serve. And I've watched you, in our interactions in the field with victims, and the love that you extend and making people feel comfortable is really a gift. And I'm super honored to be family with you now.
The feeling is mutual, although if you don't give me a sandwich next time, you're going to suffer the consequences.
I'll just make you a couple of extras. Okay. So was that the Jason story that you were threatening me with?
That's the Jason story, because everyone thinks you're so nice, but when it comes to that,
when it comes to food and not having it.
One more story. The thing that makes me laugh when I'm really sad now, if ever I'm sad now, when you told the poor girl at the coffee shop that you had the Queen in the back of the car.
I did. I said, we're transporting the Queen around America for her tour. And she believed you. She's like, really? I was like, yes, just listen to her accent.
You're gonna make wave, Queenie, or whatever you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this, right? It's this.
Exactly.
Oh,
right.
we forgot one thing. Tell the story about being around Margaret Thatcher, and what was that like?
Oh, yeah, no, we did forget that. And I'm very privileged as I am with everything. She is an amazing woman, and her and my mum are the two most powerful, amazing women that I've ever met. And my daughter has followed suit. But it's to be around her. I can't even explain it, because she was up here on a pedestal, and I was really young, and I fell into this fortunate position of being able to look after her and Henry Kissinger and her husband Dennis, who probably, I'm not even sure that the American would really know, an average American maybe not know anything about Dennis,
unless they watch The Crown, right?
Which is absolutely 100% accurate. Can I just absolutely. But he was such an amazing guy, and I kind of hung out with him, and he taught me how to make a really good gin and tonic, because that's English and that's what we do. And he showed me that for her to be the person that she was, he was the man behind that, and she acknowledged that. And I think that was so impressive, because you saw her as this incredible, strong woman, the Iron Lady, but she acknowledged, and her interaction with him was kind of spectacular, because he was the quiet person in the shadows. But to hear her voice, like her, to be stood next to her and her speak, and she sounds exactly like she does on The Crown, like they've perfect. I've gone all goosebumpy, because it was, that's one of the voices that most people of our generation would recognize.
Right.
It was a real privilege, I don't sleep anymore, because neither did she, so we weren't allowed to. So thanks for that, Maggie. It was a real privilege and an honor. And again, just one of those things in my life that I pinch myself for.
Yeah. What a fantastic life you've lived. And I know in your mind, you feel like you're just getting started. So what parting wisdom, parting shots, parting anything that do you want to leave our audience with?
Watch this space, because I met Jason, and Jason and I are going to do a lot of things that will make a lot of difference to a lot of people. And, if that's what we do from our friendship and our relationship, that's perfect. So just watch this space, because you and I are coming back.
Yep. Yes, we are. Awesome. Well, Misfit Nation, there you go. My gift to you in Nina and this amazing woman in her life. I love bringing people on here. You guys know this, that take away all excuses, right? From all perspectives, from all walks of life, and to say, you know, anything is really possible. And you know, I believe God put a message or a method or something in your life that you know makes you unique from anyone else. And to deny that is where pain exists. And to accept it and to embrace it and to be whatever it is, you know, those things that you see as barriers, move out of your way when you're moving with providence and purpose. And this woman is just a really great example of that. Thank you for being here, Nina. I appreciate you. I love you. I adore you. I can't wait for us to go on our next mission together. And I'm glad that my Misfit Nation family got to meet you, because you are a perfect misfit, actually. And those of you that are going to be coming to Unstoppable in October, you'll get to hear a little bit more from her from stage. October 22nd, 23rd in San Diego. We're almost ready to announce the location. We've been negotiating crowd size and all this other kind of stuff, but just make sure you mark those dates on your calendar. And that is it from the Bald Avenger this evening. Until next time, I love you, Misfit Nation.